The leader line, they call it, that points toward the target itself. This is what is altitude, and the altitude's normally written down in hundreds. And see that little, the little dot right there? That dot don't belong there. That's the unknown, is that dot that's in front of that slash. He doesn't belong there. I'm one of those what you would call the high government official in the FAA. I was the division chief. I was only 3 or 4 down from the admiral. I became the branch chief for the quality control. The quality control branch later on became a division, and I became a division chief, and they called it the Accidents Investigations Branch in Washington, D.C. We investigated all the airline incidences, all the accidents. I stayed there for about 6 years and then retired. The way it started is there was a 747, a Japanese Airlines 747 was coming from the northwest going across the Alaskan territory. And he was at either 31, 33, or 35,000 feet. And it was, I want to say around 11 o'clock at night, but you can check the real times. He called and asked the controller if the controller had any traffic at his altitude. And the controller said no. Basically, it was a midnight operation. They didn't have too much traffic. And he said, well, something like I have a target at my 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock position, about 8 miles. Now, in the 747, they have radar in the nose that picks up the weather outside there. So his radar is picking up a target. He sees this target with his eye, and the target, the way he described it, was a huge ball with lights running around it, and I think he said it was like 4 times as big as a 747. Well, on the day I'm doing PERs, I got behind and I told the secretary not to bother me, I'm doing PERs. And a few minutes later, the phone's ringing, and then she wouldn't stop calling. So I asked what was going on. She said, you got to talk to the people in Alaska. So I said, all right. So I forgot who it was that called, but he says, we got a problem here. I don't know what to tell the media. The whole office is full of the media from Alaska. What's the problem? He says, well, it's that UFO. I said, what UFO? He says, well, last week we had a UFO chase a 747 across the skies up here for about 30 minutes or so, and we didn't think too much of it. He says, but apparently the word got out, and we have all these news people here, and we want to know what to tell them. So being an old government employee, I told him what you always tell them, is tell them it's under investigation, and then get all that data together. I wanted all the discs that they had and all the tapes that they had available, and flown overnight to the tech center at Atlantic City. But they called the military, and they told the military they wanted all their tapes. We also control, the FAA controls all the airspace above the United States and its territory. It doesn't belong to the military, it doesn't belong to the guys shooting the rockets off. It belongs to the United States government, and it's controlled by the FAA. Nobody moves in this airspace unless we give them approval. So I told them to get the military's tapes and all their data and ship that down. Well, they called back an hour or so later, and they said the military said they were short on the tapes, and they had to put them back in service, and it's only been 12 days. So the administrator sent my boss was the associate director, Javi Safir. Sounds like Safer, but it's Safir. Sent him and me to Atlantic City to look at this thing to see if he had something to worry about. So we went in and told him that we wanted this room set up to be just like it was in Anchorage, and we wanted all that data to come to this scope, and we wanted to see everything the controller seen. We wanted to hear everything he heard, and we wanted it all tied together, the radar, the digital radar, and the sound. Found out later that some of the people that were working on that side of the fence that were displaying this had already reviewed the tapes and didn't feel comfortable in showing us what was on there. But they ran it through. When the air traffic controller had asked the military man, do you see anything? The military guy says, yes, I have a target at such and such. 1 o'clock and 8 miles from the Japanese pilot, 747. The military man said something like, yeah, I see him 35 miles north of Anchorage, and who's that at 11 or 1 o'clock in his position? And the FAA controller said, I don't have anybody. Do you have anybody? He said, it's not mine. And he came back and said, we have no traffic here. And a couple times during the operation, the Japanese pilot would say he's now at 11 o'clock, he's now at 1 o'clock, he's now at 3 o'clock, he was bouncing around, this guy here. And when he would say that, the military guy would cut in and say he's now at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, and he would confirm the position. The military controller has what they call height-finding radar, and they have long-range radar and short-range radar. So if they don't catch it on one of their systems, they catch it on the other. And if you listen to the military man, at one time he said, I have it on the height radar, or my range radar, whatever he called it, which indicated that he had a target on his system. Oz wouldn't record it. Well, they ran through for the best part of 31 minutes. The UFO would be in one position or the other, following our Japanese 747. After a while, they changed his altitude. It still stayed with him. They gave him a 360. When you're a 747, you make a 360, it takes you a few minutes to turn around, you cover a lot of space. It still stayed with him. It was either in the front, on the side, or behind him. 10, I approve 1628 to make deviations as necessary for traffic. The traffic stayed with 1628 through turns and descents in the vicinity of Fairbanks. I requested 1628 make a right 360. They would see that the target be at 1 o'clock and 7 or 8 miles, and then next it would be on the next sweep, which would be like 10 seconds later, it would be behind him 7 or 8 miles, and it always stayed 7 or 8 miles away from the target when it was all done. And we went back to Washington the next day. The administrator had called down and wanted to know if he had a problem or not. And my boss had told him, well, we took a video of it, and it looks like there might have been something there. Well, his thing was, can you come up and give us a quick 5-minute rundown? What happened? So we go up to the 10th floor, and in the conversation of a 4 or 5 minute debriefing, the administrator, which was Ingen at the time, Admiral Ingen, he said, well, have you got that video with you? Can you show me the video? And I said, yeah, and then, you just plug it in and play it. So we plugged it in for him. He started watching it, and after about 5 minutes, he told the staff, I canceled my, he had a meeting with someone in 15 minutes. He says, first he said, I'll be late, and then next it was cancel, and then I'm going to be here till this is over. So he watched the whole thing just over half an hour. When he got all,
this was the administrator of FAA?
The administrator of the FAA. We got all done. He says, what do you guys think? Well, I guess that's why he was the service director and I wasn't. He gave a good political answer that said he wasn't sure what it was. Didn't know if it was anything. So his take was, don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to anybody until I give you the okay. The next day, I got a call from someone with the scientific study group or the CIA, I'm not sure who it was the first time. And they wanted to know, they had some questions about the incident. And I had said, I don't know what you're talking about, you probably want to call the Admiral. A few minutes later, the Admiral calls down and says, I set up a briefing tomorrow morning at 9 or 10 o'clock, what it was. In the round room, bring all the stuff you have, bring everybody up there, and give them whatever they want. And we want to get out of it, just let them do whatever they want to do with it. So I brought all the people from the tech center. We went upstairs, we had all kinds of boxes of data that we had them print out, filled up the room. They brought in 3 people from the FBI, 3 people from the CIA, and 3 people from Reagan's scientific study team, and I don't know who the rest of the people were. But they were all excited. We gave them the video, let them watch the video. Then I had they had all kinds of questions about the frequencies, the rate of the antenna turning, on and on and on. How many radars, how many antennas, how's the data get processed. They were all excited. The only way a man would be if that was his job. When they got done, they actually swore all these other guys into that this never took place. We never had this meeting, and this was never recorded. Now, what I tried to tell you before...
Who said that? Who was saying this?
This was one of the guys from the CIA, okay, that they were never there, this never happened. When I asked them at the time, I said, well, I don't know why you're saying this. I mean, it's, if there was something there, and if it's not the stealth bomber, then, you know, it's a UFO. And if it's a UFO, why wouldn't you want the people to know? Oh, they get all excited over that. You don't even want to say those words. He said this is the first time they ever had 30 minutes of radar data on a UFO, and they're all itching to get their hands into the data and to find out what it is and what really goes. And if they come out and told the American public that they ran into a UFO out there, it would cause panic across the country, so therefore you can't talk about it. And they're taking all this data. So I said, okay, take all that data. That's what you want.
Who took the data?
Well, that group. I don't know who it went to, but that group took it. But they took only what we had there. They didn't ask me if there was anything else that I had. They said they're taking all this data. And I said, fine. Now, I had the original video that I took, and I had the pilot's report that came through, the first report, and I had the FAA's first report that was all downstairs on my table. They didn't ask for that, so I didn't give it to them. And later on, when I retired, that was the stuff that was in my office, and all that came with me, and we've been sitting on that ever since. So we watched the whole thing. Now, what happened at the end is as the Japanese 747 is leaving the airspace, there's a United coming up to land in Alaska. The controller says to the United, we've got a Japanese 747 up here that is being chased, followed by a UFO. We'd like you to check him out. Can we leave you at the altitude? And the United says, fine, or sure. And so they give him a left turn, 20 degrees or so, keep him at his altitude, and they kind of run him in toward the Japanese 747. Once the two airplanes pass, that target follows the United down through the airspace until he gets on final and then disappears. When they read the reports that come through, the FAA has to protect themselves, so you can't say you saw a target, even though this is what he said. So they made him change his report to position symbols, which makes it sound like it wasn't really a target. Well, if it's not a target, then a lot of the other position symbols that we're separating from aren't targets either. And when I read that, I thought, there's something fishy here, that somebody's worried about something rather than they're trying to cover up. When the CIA told us that this never happened and we never had this meeting, I believe it was because they didn't want the public to know that this was going on. Normally we would put out some type of a news release that such and such happened. That I think it was mysterious that the military tapes disappeared. It wasn't right. We went from 30 days to 15 days, and the first indication makes it look like it must have been a military operation that they were doing up there, or the military knew more than we did about who the visitors were, and they didn't want anybody else to know. And of course, the people that are involved at the lower levels don't really know what's going on above them. When someone calls up and says, put those tapes back in service, they just put them back in service. They really don't care.